Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Year Without a Summer. One of the most devastating natural events occurred in the summer of 1816. It was known as the Year Without a Summer. All across New England there was cold and darkness, while snow and rain fell throughout Europe. It boggled historians for centuries, and at the time, most people believed the end of days had come and the world was about to end. But just how bad was it? Well, it was extremely bad. There was almost no sunshine for a full year. The crops were terribly hard to grow because frost never left the ground. Food became suddenly scarce. People couldn't feed themselves since farming was almost impossible. Nobody could get around anywhere because all the horses died, and Europe was left in shambles. Historians say that the riots of 1816 and 1817 proved to be the worst violence in Europe since the French Revolution, with people who carried flags reading bread or blood. And because nobody understood what was happening, they blamed those in charge. Oddly enough, the same thing happened over 1,000 years earlier in the year 536, when the world went dark for a full 18 months. This phenomena wasn't because of any godly or paranormal intervention. It was actually quite scientific and related to something that happened on the other side of the world. In 1815, the volcano at Mount Tambora on the Indonesian island of Sumbawa erupted. It was the largest eruption since the one that caused the Great Darkness of 536. It was made even worse by the fact that Mayon, a volcano in the Philippines, erupted the year prior in 1814. All that volcanic activity ejected such preposterous amounts of ash into the atmosphere that the sky was completely black, blocking out the sun, its light, and its warmth. Number 9. Burning Mountain. Scientists generally agree that early humans, or hominins, learned how to use fire roughly 1 million years ago. Fuel, oxygen, and heat are the three ingredients needed to create a flame and keep it burning. Theoretically, if a fire never ran out of these resources, it could burn forever. So long as a heat source triggers a combustion reaction to ignite the fuel never runs out, and the oxygen which keeps it burning stays stable, a fire could realistically burn on until the end of time. And that brings us to Eastern Australia, to Mount Wingan in New South Wales. Here, a fire has been burning for at least 5,500 years. At least those are the confirmed years. Geologists say it could have been burning for a total of 500,000 years. Long before humans ever shuffled out of caves, this fire ignited and it never stopped burning. It's appropriately called Burning Mountain, and wisps of sulfurous smoke have been seen rising from the blaze ever since people have lived in Australia. In fact, the fire has been burning so intensely for so long that the surrounding 53,800 square feet has been turned into a red and withering hellscape. The fire itself is underground and shows absolutely no signs of stopping. Researchers believe that thousands of years ago, an underground coal seam was exposed to the surface of the earth, struck by lightning, and set to smolder. Ever since, a gently writhing fire has been gradually eating at that coal seam at about 3 feet per year. Today, the fire has moved to 100 feet below ground and is still munching on the bed of coal, its toxic discharge seeping out through fissures at the surface. Number 8. Unexplained Lights. On September 7, 2021, Mexico was hit by a 7.0 magnitude earthquake. Interestingly, the earthquake itself wasn't the strange phenomenon that day, but rather a series of bizarre blue and red lights that lit up the sky. The ground quaked and the sky flared as if the clouds had been lit on fire. It was so terrifying that the locals thought the apocalypse was coming, while people panicked in the streets and ran for the safety of their homes. The epicenter of the quake was near the city of Acapulco, but it was felt all the way in Mexico City, over 200 miles away. The lights appeared brighter near the center, and scientists still don't know what happened. The prevailing theory is that they were earthquake lights, also known as EQL. This is a phenomenon that's been recorded multiple times through the centuries, and almost always occurs either in the hours or minutes before dramatic seismic activity. In ancient times, people spoke about earthquake lights as if they were signs from the gods. but in modern times, they were dismissed as folklore or crazy illusions. It wasn't until recently when people started videotaping everything, and scientists had to come to the conclusion that earthquake lights were in fact very real. But that hasn't helped scientists to figure out what in the world they are. Some researchers say the apocalyptic light show could be the byproduct of the Earth's magnetic field being disrupted by tectonic stress. Another theory, which came about in a study published back in 2014, claims the lights happen when certain rocks release energy due to seismic activity. This is why people literally see blue flames emerging from the ground, because there are rocks releasing massive amounts of visible energy. At the end of the day, these are all just theories, and nobody knows for sure what earthquake lights really are. Number 7. Chile's giant sinkhole. In late July of 2022, scientists in Chile were left baffled when an enormous sinkhole bigger than a tennis court opened up in the middle of the Atacama Desert. The hole was measured by experts at 104 feet across and over twice as deep, making it an absolutely gargantuan hole. It's almost perfectly circular and looks like a borehole made by some kind of giant alien digging machine. It appeared over the weekend near a copper mine north of Santiago, and nobody's entirely sure how or why it happened. The hole was seen as such a dangerous threat that a huge security perimeter was immediately set up around it. There was some speculation that the hole had something to do with a large mine located just a few feet from it, but the mining firm, London Mining, says they don't have a clue what happened. It hasn't impacted the personnel or the infrastructure of the mine, and it seems to be totally unrelated. In the words of Cristian Zúñiga, the mayor of the local town of about 13,000 people, this sinkhole is unprecedented. It's lucky nobody happened to be walking over the area when the hole appeared. Otherwise, they would have fallen into a seemingly bottomless pit and almost certainly died. It's scary to think that at pretty much any time, a hole could swallow the earth and anything in its way. Number 6. Global tsunamis. On August 12, 2021, there was a 7.5 magnitude earthquake underneath the South Sandwich Islands. This is a British overseas territory, an uninhabited group of islands. 3 minutes after the initial earthquake, there was another massive tremor of 8.1 magnitude. These kinds of earthquakes aren't that unusual. The only strange thing about the event was that a powerful tsunami followed the second quake. It was so beastly that it was measured in 3 different oceans: the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian. It wasn't a destructive tsunami, but it was the first one since the catastrophe of 2004 to be recorded in 3 oceans simultaneously. What scientists are trying to understand now is why. They can't seem to figure out how certain types of earthquakes cause tsunamis and others don't. It should have something to do with depth. When an earthquake happens extremely deep, it usually isn't sufficiently powerful enough to flex the seafloor and create a massive tidal wave. And yet, this earthquake did exactly that, pushing a tidal wave out in 3 directions. If it had been significantly larger and stronger, those tidal waves could have decimated 3 coastlines and possibly killed hundreds of thousands of people. According to Judith Hubbard, a structural geologist from Singapore, the tsunami detection systems we're currently using might not be good enough because, unfortunately, scientists still may not have a strong grasp on the intricacies of our own planet. What this means is that the next tsunami could happen quickly and without warning, and be the worst natural event of our lifetime. Number 5. Thors Well. Thors Well off the coast of Oregon is one of the most unique and spectacular natural phenomena on the Pacific coast. It can be found just off the side of the Oregon Coast Highway. The reason it's so spectacular is that even from the road, you can see the water of the ocean gushing down into a huge hole in the rock. Thors Well is a very old sea cave that collapsed a long time ago, creating something like a drainage pipe to the ocean. For those who don't know what they're looking at, it appears to be a bottomless chasm gurgling seawater as waves crash in and out. As soon as one wave smashes into the well, the water gets pushed out and violently sprays before it is immediately swallowed back up by the hole. Even though it looks like a gigantic pit, it's actually only around 20 feet deep. And while it's one of Oregon's best natural wonders, it's also extremely dangerous. During high tide and storms, when the water is particularly violent, onlookers run the risk of being pushed off the basalt rocks near the hole and dragged into it. If somebody falls into Thors Well, that's pretty much the end of them. The aggressive water will trap them in an unending maelstrom of foam and water as they get pushed down to the bottom of the hole and then spat out again. Number 4. Living stones of Romania. There is an unusual geological formation near the small Romanian town of Costesti. Gigantic boulders known as trovents have mesmerized and intrigued the locals for centuries. These bulbous boulders have an almost organic shape. They seem to ooze like wet cement, and legend has it that they can grow and move as if they had minds of their own. Each boulder varies greatly in size and shape. Some are so small you could put them in your pocket, while others loom over 15 feet tall. There are hundreds of them, and they are spread out across at least 20 places in Romania. However, the most famous trovents are found in Costesti, when the sand was quarried away and the magnificent living stones were revealed. But are these stones actually alive? Do they move and grow like the locals say? The truth is that they most likely don't move on their own. Some of the rocks even have solid bases, proving that there is no way they can just roll around. As for how they were formed, scientists say it likely happened during a series of earthquakes 6 million years ago. The immense earthquakes caused sand grains to get stuck together with natural limestone cement, and they formed concretions of solid rock. The living stones get their spheroid shapes because of extremely long-lasting seismic activity, with shock waves literally pounding sandy sediments and limestone into impossible circular lumps. Number 3. The Ice Volcano. In 2021, an unbelievable ice volcano emerged in Kazakhstan. Years of hot spring water gushing out of the thick layer of ice has created this natural phenomena in the Almaty region. It wasn't a small volcano either, standing an estimated 45 feet tall. According to scientists, it was all thanks to seemingly impossible meteorological conditions lining up perfectly to create one of the strangest natural wonders ever seen. At the time the volcano formed, the temperatures plummeted way below freezing in the Almaty region. The ground was covered in a thick and solid layer of ice and snow, but then a crack in the earth released hot water from an underground spring. The water sprayed into the atmosphere, was frozen by the chilly air, and then fell back to the surface as chunky ice. Over time, the frozen water created a vertical funnel just like that of a volcano. Of course, an ice volcano and a real volcano are two very different things. The ice volcano doesn't have any lava spewing out of it, and was more like a hot water fountain. It forms pretty much every year, making it one of the most popular travel destinations for Kazakh locals in the winter. Number 2. Slope Point. In New Zealand, Slope Point is as south as a person can get. It's the southernmost spot on South Island, and it's home to some extraordinarily unusual trees. The trees are so oddly shaped it looks as though they should be in a Van Gogh painting. Maybe they were pushed back by an angry wind and then stuck like that. It looks, in pictures, like they were drawn onto the landscape with pastels. The strange trees are perched at the top of some rugged cliffs which descend straight into the ocean. At this spot, cold, harsh wind is a ceaseless thing. All day, every day, brutal winds rip across the cliffs and push back everything that grows in the windy landscape. It's these winds that have left a huge patch of trees perpetually mangled. They stretch sideways at an angle instead of straight up, and their branches are all contorted at unusual angles. But this begs the question, how did these trees survive at all with this raging wind? They were planted by sheep farmers who needed to protect their flocks from the savage weather. The wind comes up from the Antarctic Ocean uninterrupted and unimpeded, so that every day is practically hurricane season. Number 1. Milky Seas. People have been reporting a strange natural event out at sea ever since the days of ancient mariners. The event is quite unusual in that suddenly and without warning, a large area of sea up to 6,000 square miles will grow translucent. And almost always, the translucent glow is a thick and soupy shade of blue. It looks as if the glow-in-the-dark liquid spilled into the ocean. The weird patch of glowing water beams so brightly that in 2005, scientists witnessed the event from satellites in orbit. These events are called Milky Seas. In 2015, the National Institute of Oceanography found that the glowing waves were the result of a bacterium. Tiny microorganisms called Noctiluca scintillans, also known as sea sparkles, glow brightly as they float on the surface of the ocean. It's like an algae bloom, but one that's incredibly rare. Thanks for watching! Would you rather visit an ice volcano or witness a giant sinkhole? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!